Chapter 771, Athanasia Demon Gong. In order to reach the Heaven Lake, everyone had to register with the two protectors beside the gate. Each sect had its own points accumulation system. It would be more tedious to trade item for item or to make contributions to gain something. The standardization of a point system would also make it much more convenient for the sects to hand out rewards and other matters. However, this required there to be logistics personnel who would be in charge of the account book. Although they did not have computers, the two guardians still had a divine object specially used to record. "Young lord, why did you bring a dog with you today?" a middle-aged man asked with a smile. "To promote it to the divine realm," Zhang Han laughed and said. "Then it must be lucky. Quickly go. Young master is waiting for you in the room next to the one you used last time," the middle-aged man replied. "Okay." Zhang Han brought Little Hai into the room. The two men could not help but chatted with each other. "I heard from First Elder that young lord has made a great contribution to our sect's abundant resources." "Yeah, I don't even know how he did it. In the beginning, I didn't feel that he was powerful because I could feel from his aura that he was not at the divine realm stage yet, but now, I don't understand and I can't sense it from him. He didn't deliberately hide it, but he makes people feel that he's mysterious. This is a mystery. The young master's son is really not ordinary. How can the descendants of our master be ordinary?" Zhang Shenwang was a legend in their hearts. The young master Zhang Guangyu was generous and popular. For the sake of both of them, they would turn a blind eye no matter how arrogant and domineering the young lord was. However, they did not expect the young lord to be gentle and easygoing. This helped them to accept him faster. Unexpectedly, Zhang Han did not pay much attention to the treasures or other things in the Heavenly Knights sect. He also knew that his father would leave him any good things he had. He did not even need to think about it at all. He could just say what he needed. Zhang Han walked inside and came to the front of the house. Then, Zhang Guangyu came out. Zhang Guangyu could not help saying, "Are you sure you're not going to consider the 9 dragons skill that your grandfather has cultivated? I've benefited a lot from the years of cultivating. This skill helps martial artists to improve a great deal." Hearing this, Zhang Han shook his head slightly and pointed at his head with his right hand. "Have you forgotten this?" "What?" Zhang Guangyu was confused for a moment but understood him immediately. He was referring to the 500 years of martial arts heritage of predecessors that he had obtained. After thinking for a while, he said, "Sometimes, the inheritance is not suitable for yourself. In case of any accidents, it will be difficult to turn back. Most importantly, I don't know whether the inheritance you have obtained is clear or not. If it comes in bits and pieces and is blurry, you have to consider it carefully. Don't worry, I know all the details clearly." Zhang Han smiled again. How could he not be clear of his 500 years of cultivation? "It's not just my cultivation method. When the time comes, I'll also think of a better one for you, and for Uncle Dong and the others too. It will help to improve the overall capabilities of the Heavenly Knights sect. I can then be at ease with being a third-class martial superior." "You are confident, ha ha ha." Zhang Guangyu laughed and said, "Let's go in, I'll be your protector." "Okay." After entering the room, Zhang Guangyu saw Little Hai following them in. He asked, "Why did you bring Little Hai with you?" "To let him inherit the innate supernatural power," Zhang Han replied. On a day-to-day basis, he would occasionally talk about some knowledge regarding the cultivation world. Over time, he started to understand it. Naturally, this was the idea that Zhang Han had. He did not know when he would go to the cultivation world in the future, so there was no need to deliberately talk about it. Innate supernatural power, what's that? Zhang Guangyu was confused. He had never heard of it before. For example, spirit beasts' innate supernatural powers will be awakened when they reach a certain realm. This is their advantage. For example, strange beasts are born with innate supernatural powers, and some have more than one. We humans also possess innate supernatural powers. For example, after we break through a certain realm, we will have the attributes of spiritual forces, such as wind, fire, lightning, thunder, power. There's also attributes for improvement, such as for formations, incantations, etc. There are many categories. In general, it's called innate supernatural powers. They're used to help cultivators increase their strength. I personally possess one of them. You have one? Zhang Wengyu's eyes lit up. What is it? Is it the ability to break the heaven-earth formation? No, the reason I'm able to break the heaven-earth formation is because of my understanding of formations. My innate supernatural power is that my nose is more sensitive and I can smell treasures. I call it the treasure-sniffing nose. Treasure-sniffing nose? I see. I was wondering why you brought me directly to the treasury of other sects. It turns out that you have such an incredible ability. Zhang Guangyu was a little stunned. He was silent for 2 seconds before asking, do those special power individuals, for example, those who can control fire and water, have innate supernatural powers? Well, that's one of them. I haven't seen a special power individual, so I'm not sure. Zhang Han shook his head and said, wait, you have such a powerful talent. Why do you want to pass it to Little Hai? You don't want it anymore? Zhang Wengyu's face suddenly fell. Spirit beasts were indeed not bad and Little Hai was very loyal, but Zhang Wengyu did not want Zhang Han to give up his ability blindly. Yes, I don't want it anymore. Zhang Han thought silently for a while and replied, the treasure-sniffing nose corresponds to the treasure-searching formulas. This method does not improve one's fighting power by much. Although I will never be short of treasures and might be the richest person in the world, capabilities are the most fundamental elements. This is not the path that I want to take. I've already thought this through. The path that I want to take will be a more difficult and tougher one. If he followed the cultivation method he had used before he was reborn, then when divine thunder over the sky comes, would he be blasted into pieces again? Besides, he now possessed the 10 inches Danshan, as well as a mutated soul sense see and sound of thunder. Having such strong capabilities, wouldn't it be a waste of his potential if he chose not to walk such a difficult path of cultivation? Hearing this, Zhang Wengyu fell silent for a while. Eventually, he asked, what kind of tough road do you want to take? I want to cultivate there, Athanasia Demon Gong. Zhang Han took in a gentle breath and said slowly, after cultivating the Athanasia Demon Gong to the peak, one can achieve immortality. Even if my body is destroyed, as long as there is a drop of blood left, I can be reborn. With the immortal body, I can live as long as heaven and earth, and shine with the sun and the moon. The Athanasia Demon Gong has 8 supernatural powers. I can pick stars with my hands and step on stars with my feet. The path that I want to take is one where my body is undefeatable. Buzz. After those words were said, Zhang Guangyu was stunned. After a while, he finally spewed out these words, son, are you possessed? Are you even talking about a human being? To be exact, I'm talking about being a cultivator. Zhang Han laughed and said, the world I'm familiar with is far more complicated than here. Kunlun Immortal World should be a corner that can show off the cultivation world, Dad. Although I haven't entered it, there are so many secrets in this world and we will slowly explore them. There's still a long time, and you will gradually find out more in the future. Stop talking. I'm having a headache already. Zhang Guangyu raised his hand and continued, just tell me, is there any danger to cultivate the Athanasia Demon Gong? No. Zhang Han thought for a moment and replied, rumor has it that one can only cultivate it after breaking through the shackles. The 9th level is the limit, and one can transcend worldliness. I can cultivate this kind of technique, but you guys can't, so I have to think about your techniques carefully. Zhang Han had gotten the Athanasia Demon Gong when he was passing tribulation to the 9th stage and had encountered a life and death realm. That secret realm was a secret realm of antiquity times, and there were 3 marks on the stone tablets that seemed like reflections from cultivation. The words mentioned talked about the 9th level being the maximum, and you have to transcend worldliness to cultivate, otherwise, your body would burst into pieces. Back then, Zhang Han was still thinking about what it meant to transcend. The second marking talked about the Danshan, and the third was about the soul sense C. The only thing that was not recorded was the danger, which meant that 3 people had practiced this method before Zhang Han, but none of them succeeded. Now, the 10 inches Danshan and mutated soul sense C had given Zhang Han the capital for cultivation, which made him decide to choose it. If he succeeded, he would gain unlimited benefits. If he took this path, he believed that in the future, he could face the divine thunder over the sky with his body. Zhang Wangyu did not stop him. He waved his hand and said, "No need to think about our methods for the time being, since you have already thought about it, just go ahead." Okay. Zhang Han did not waste time talking. He sat in the middle of the hall and waved to Little Hai. Little Hai walked to Zhang Han obediently and sat down. "Be careful." Although Zhang Guangyu knew that Zhang Han was confident, he could not help reminding him. Okay. Zhang Han nodded and slowly closed his eyes. Dong. A low and sonorous sound suddenly came from Zhang Han's body. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Numerous medium-grade crystals appeared one after another. They were in broken pieces and the sparkling silk threads formed a formation. Then, abundant spiritual chi began to fill the whole room. In addition, pure energy had been pouring in initially, causing the spiritual chi to become increasingly dense. It gradually turned into a thin mist, and then liquefied like a drizzle. Go. Zhang Han suddenly opened his eyes. A bright light was sparkling in his gaze. Following that, his face lit up and streams of flowing light converged into a line and floated towards Little Hai. It landed on its head and converged into a spot of light. Whoosh. Energy kept attacking him. Zhang Han took out 3 divine objects consecutively, crushed them, and turned them into colorful lights that converged on Little Hai's face. At the same time, the rich spiritual chi in the room also converged on Little Hai's body. Its breath rose sharply. Grand Master Peak, Divine Realm. Just like that, the impact of the energy sources helped it to break through. Once again, there was a cracking sound in his body. His bones, flesh, and blood were all improving, but the biggest improvement was in its tusks. 90% of its energy was concentrated on its teeth, changing and improving them from inside out. Swoosh. As the last sound was heard, the light on Zhang Han's face faded away. There was some exhaustion in his gaze. Whether or not you can succeed will depend on your incarnation. It was not easy to pass down a supernatural power. Little Hai and Dai had absorbed the essence of the Thunder Yang tree, which was refined by Zhang Han with essence blood. With this layer of connection, the success rate was much higher. However, there was a danger to all things. Zhang Han could not be sure if it will succeed or not. Phew. Zhang Han took in a gentle breath. It's my turn. Break and reforge. I'll cultivate the Athanasia demon gong. Boom. As Zhang Han murmured, there seemed to be a big explosion in his body. Zhang Guangyu was confused. Destroying his own meridian? He is reforging his meridian? He did not know about this process, but he had heard that it was very painful. However, he could not do anything about it. Zhang Han had to bear the consequences for the path he had chosen. Little did he know that destroying his own meridians was only the first step. The Athanasia demon gong was not just about meridians, but the internal organs, flesh, blood, and skin would all be connected. The meridian map of this skill was as abundant as an old tree root. There were countless lines all over the place. Any mistake would lead to failure. Chapter 772, The Test. Sizzle. There was a constant burning sound coming from within Zhang Han's body. Hearing that, Zhang Guangyu was extremely alarmed. Was Zhang Han burning his body? Alongside this strange sound, Zhang Han's face changed, turned blue and green, and there was occasionally streams of blood flowing out of his body. This was because he had failed to control his meridians properly. The 8 extra meridians and the main meridians were relatively easy to handle. The most problematic ones were the branches. They were everywhere. Fortunately, Zhang Han's resilience was relatively strong. Even though his body was in great pain, he still looked calm and at peace. The Athanasia demon gong is indeed difficult. I have already used up all of my spiritual force and soul sense in my body, yet I have only developed less than 1/10 of it. I'm afraid I have to use up a lot of resources today. As recorded on the tablet, the Athanasia demon gong requires a massive amount of spirit treasures to support it. Only when I cultivate it to the highest completion level can I cultivate the immortal body. This path that I'm taking is one where I am a sage with a human body. The first level is to refine my bones, skin, flesh, and blood. The second level is to cultivate the viscera, danshan, and soul sense C. Finally, the third level is to cultivate the immortal body. This path is destined to be difficult, but I have the persistence to cultivate the Athanasia demon gong. Tonight, as long as I open up my meridians, run the cultivation method once, I can start to cultivate the skin level, and achieve the immortal skin. Then, the divine weapons in this world will not be able to hurt me. By then, my cultivation is probably at the middle stage of innateness. At that point in time, I can fight the Heaven Peak stage head-on. If I break through the last stage, I can defeat the Heaven Peak stage easily. At the innateness stage, the foundation of my 10 inches danshan and the thunder mark of my soul sense C had just begun. Even the holy sons and daughters of the major sects, or even the ancient demonic beasts, may not be as strong as me at the beginning. After adjusting his thoughts, Zhang Han had a plan in his mind. He began to absorb a large amount of spiritual qi to act as an energy source for opening his meridians. Whoosh! Gradually, the liquefied spiritual qi flowed continuously into his body like little streams. He had deliberately slowed down for Little Hai to absorb them and to make sure his energy had stabilized. Then, the rate that the spiritual qi was being absorbed began to increase drastically. They started to pour into Zhang Han like a river. A few minutes later, the energy was like a raging sea and it seemed to be running out. Zhang Wengyu's expression froze as he watched. His ears twitched and he turned around to walk into the room. An Earth Realm protector guarding the Heaven Lake said with a wry smile, "Young master, the commotion inside is too big." Before he could finish speaking, Zhang Guangyu waved his hand and said, "Take this." 20 divine objects with powerful energy emerged. "All right then, you're rich and imposing." The protector turned around and ran away with the divine objects. Therefore, the spiritual qi in Zhang Han's cultivation room did not stop. This caused Zhang Wangyu to sigh repeatedly. This boy is a black hole. It was still fine if he did not cultivate, but once he started, he had to absorb an immense amount of energy. He's using so much energy to reforge the meridians again. It's probably not an ordinary process. Seeing that Zhang Han's breaths were steady, Zhang Guangyu was not worried anymore. Instead, he started to observe him. After 2 hours, Little Hai woke up. When it moved its body, its bones made crackling sounds. It was still as big as before, and its muscles seemed more balanced. Even so, its body size was bigger than more than 90% of all other dogs, and its body was not inferior to that of a large Tibetan Mastiff. How can a 4-eyed dog be so handsome? Sigh. Little fella, you are the most handsome 4-eyed dog in this world. Zhang Guangyu looked at Little Hai and sensed that its breathing had stabilized in the divine realm. Zhang Han was the one cultivating the method and his dog was riding on his success. The dog that Zhang Wengyu's son had raised was already in the divine realm. That little fella's combat capability was comparable to divine realm. Zhang Wangyu also felt some pressure. His son was better than him, but he should not do it too much, otherwise, Uncle Dong would say this each time, "You are much better than your father." Now that things were like this, it seemed that it was time for Zhang Wangyu to cultivate too. Their speed was too intense. If it went on like this, even the dogs raised by his son would be better than him. Awu. Little Hai howled gently and walked lazily in front of Zhang Wangyu. Then, it sat down at his feet and waited for its master to come out. The source of energy was continuing, and Zhang Han kept absorbing it. In the past few hours, more than 70% of his meridians had been opened. They were spread all over his feet, legs, abdomen, and had already reached his chest. It was continuing to bring the force upwards. I didn't expect it to be so difficult. Zhang Han felt a little emotional, but he did not want to rush it. This was not an urgent matter, even if more than 99% had been completed. The last trace should not be dealt with carelessly. There were many things that could cause him to fail at the last part. Buzz. When the progress reached his neck, there was a spasm of fluctuation in his body. It seemed to have shaken the entire space and swept across all directions. Seeing this, Zhang Wengyu's face fell slightly. He stretched out his right hand and turned his spiritual force into an energy shield to hide from the fluctuation. Buzz, buzz. Wave after wave of energy ran into him like ocean waves. This change caused Zhang Wangyu to notice that Zhang Han had already reached the final stage of cultivation. The head was a difficult part to overcome. Zhang Han slowed down and was ready to take his time, but he did not expect that his energy expanded. Wood thunder started acting up again. Crack. All of a sudden, the sound of thunder started flickering inside Zhang Han's body. Clatter. Zhang Han felt as if his heart had skipped a beat as he thought it was going to fail. Sure enough, a low, sonorous sound was heard from within Zhang Han's body and a lot of blood spilled out from within. His breath also became weak and unstable. However, he did not expect the undying attribute of the Wood thunder to help his body recover instantly. Stabilizing meridians? The surprise came quite suddenly. The Wood thunder was threatened and took the initiative to attack. But it still belonged to Zhang Han. Seeing this, Zhang Han controlled the Wood thunder with his mind and started to stabilize his meridians. This helped him to speed up the whole process. Buzz. The last wave of energy attack expanded all the meridians from his head to toe. If one could see through his body, he would be able to see the densely spread meridians in his body looking like a wire net. There were the main meridians, the 8 extra meridians, and countless tiny meridians. However, Zhang Han did not stop the impact of the Wood thunder. Each time it attacked, his meridians would be stabilized quicker. After 3 attacks, Zhang Han then recalled his sound of thunder defeatedly. Then, a large amount of spiritual force came out of his danshan. At Arnasia Demon Gong, Zhang Han began to unleash his skills. It started from his danshan and circulated throughout his whole body. He could feel the sublimation as it happened. A string of clattering sound. His cultivation had improved again from the early stage of innateness to nearing the middle stage before it slowly came to a stop. It's done. Zhang Wengyu's eyes lit up. He watched Zhang Han slowly open his eyes with an excited gaze. Phew. He let out a long turbid breath. How was it? Zhang Wangyu asked. Very successful. What time is it now? I think it's around 4 o'clock. The sky's not bright yet. That's good. Zhang Han stood up and chuckled. Let's call it a day. I can still catch up on some sleep after heading back. He was really tired. He had lost his supernatural power and his meridians were destroyed and then reconstructed. All these exhausted too much of his energy. Zhang Wangyu felt it too, so he did not say anything and went back home with Zhang Han. When they came to the lawn area, they could hear Dai snoring loudly. This fella basically had no sense of vigilance. Of course, that was because Little Hai was there. They each went back to their own homes. Little Hai lied down next to Dai. Zhang Wangyu went back to his room next door, and Zhang Han went back to his single house with its own yard. When he entered the bedroom, Meng was still soundly asleep. Hearing some footsteps, Xian opened her eyes in a daze and muttered vaguely, "Honey, you're back?" He replied, "Yes." He took off his coat and climbed into bed. Xian then felt at ease. She snuggled up to Zhang Han and soon fell into a deep sleep. Zhang Han also slowly closed his eyes due to the exhaustion. He had a good sleep. After an unknown period of time, Zhang Han felt that his nose was itchy. He then knew what was going on. When he opened his eyes, he saw Meng Meng holding a strand of Xian's long hair tickling him. Papa, are you awake? Meng Meng asked as if nothing had happened. Was someone tickling me just now, Meng Meng? Did you see who it was? Zhang Han asked curiously. I didn't see who it was. Huh? Then why was my nose itchy? Am I dreaming? Zhang Han put on a confused look. Yes, Papa, you must be dreaming. Meng Meng nodded seriously. Oh, so it's just a dream. Then I'll sleep for a while more. Zhang Han closed his eyes as soon as he finished speaking. After waiting for 10 seconds, there was still no movement. Zhang Han narrowed his eyes and saw Meng Meng blinking her big eyes. She was carefully holding onto her hair and approaching Zhang Han slowly. He almost burst out laughing at that moment, but he held it in. Another 5 seconds passed. When her hair fell on his nose, Zhang Han also opened his eyes. Very well, it turns out that you're the bad guy. I've caught you. Zhang Han sat up, held Meng Meng in his arms, and tickled under her arms. Ha ha ha. No one knew if Meng Meng was feeling happy or was afraid of tickling as she kept laughing. At that moment, Xian came in from the bathroom and was drying her fringe. Seeing this scene, a smile of happiness hung from the corner of her lips. When she had given birth to Meng Meng, she had wondered whether she would one day have a father who would play with her like this. And now, the fact was that the three of them were destined to be together. Xian felt that it was God's will. Mama asked me to wake you up. After Zhang Han loosened his grip, Meng Meng sat up and said with a serious look, Is that so? Yes, that's right. I don't dare to punish your mother. What should I do? Well. Meng Meng turned her head and looked at Xian. She thought, I don't dare to. Then, she changed the subject. Papa, I'm hungry. This worked every time. Hearing this, Zhang Han got up and got dressed. Let's go and have some delicious breakfast. Hence, Xian helped Meng Meng to get dressed and the family of 3 went out of the door. At that moment, Rong Jiali had already prepared breakfast. At the breakfast table, there were only Jiang Wenyu, Rong Jiali, and Zhang Han's family. The others all went to the outer disciple area to join the fun. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the external examination officially began. Zhao Feng and the rest all joined in the competition. The assessment system was such that you would choose your opponent by drawing lots. The winner would get 1 point, the loser would get no points. After 1 round, you would then draw lots to pick the next opponent. In the end, everyone's combined scores would be tabulated. The point system was one way to test the disciples. At the same time, some protectors would also be the watching. Some of the disciples who were talented but were not at a high realm would be recruited on an exception basis. 5 years ago, there was a disciple who became the chief despite only having the strength of the Grand Master middle stage. He left behind a great legacy. Chapter 773, at compound interest. In the outer ring assessment, if both sides had points, the loser would have half of their points awarded to the winner. In this way, more and more points would be given to the strong and the weak would end up with lesser points. This was the most basic assessment. There were also some tests for alchemy, array and other talents. If they qualified, they would be selected to be disciples of the 8 peaks. This was something the outring disciples had been waiting for a long time and they certainly had prepared well for this opportunity. However, no matter how much they tried, Zhang Han was not interested at all. During the 2 days when he accompanied Meng Meng, Zhang Han would go to the Heaven Lake room to cultivate every night. After 2 days, his meridians were completely stabilized and his chi could be circulated slowly. At noon on the 3rd day, Meng Meng felt sleepy after lunch and took a nap. Zhang Han was free, so he went toward the direction of the outer ring competition. On the left side of the front mountain was a wide area that belonged to the outer ring. In the arena square, there were already a lot of disciples. More than 1,000 outer ring disciples had sharpened their swords and were displaying their skills. The number of people in the challenge arena was 30 in total, so they had to queue to take part in the fight. At the side of the challenge arenas, there was a long line of people, including Wang Xiao, Jiang Bing, the third elder, the sixth elder and command beast peak host, all of whom were talented disciples. Some of the peak host or elders who were free would also come over to watch the competition. They also attached great importance to the power of the new generation, but they did not need to be present. Zhang Han glanced at them but did not greet any of them. Instead, he walked toward the side from the periphery of the arena. Within a challenge arena in the center, Zhao Feng and a young man were attracting a lot of attention. Within 3 breaths, more than 40 people had gathered around. Oh, it seems that Zhao Feng is good at fighting. His ability to attract so many people to watch the competition shows that he is relatively powerful. Zhang Han thought so, but the comments that came to his ears were different from what he thought. Elder Martial Brother Yuan will abuse others again. After 2 days of fighting, he has not lost a single battle, and he is so lucky that he has not met those extremely powerful ones. Now he has 49 points. If he defeats this man, he will get 50 points. You are wrong. That's young master's man, who is also very powerful and who has more than 30 points after losing once. It seems that he will lose again and forfeit his points to Martial Brother Yuan. But if Brother Yuan meets those who have just broken into the divine realm, he will lose half of the points. It depends on his luck. Of course, luck is also part of our strength. We just need to show ourselves well and the elders will be able to see it. That is the truth, but the points are related to our rewards. Now the highest points seem to be reaching 200. Today is the 2nd day and there are still 3 days left. Maybe someone can gain more than 1,000 points and exchange that for a divine object. After listening to them, Zhang Han knew that they regarded Zhao Feng as a rookie. But there is still a slight chance for him to win. Let's see how he will exert his big dark devil shadow. Zhang Han looked at Zhao Feng who was preparing to adjust his chi. He sensed the martial artist on the opposite side. Zhao Feng was at Grandmaster middle stage and was very close to Grandmaster peak. The other side was at Grandmaster peak and there was only a small gap between them. With his profound skills, Zhao Feng might be able to defeat his opponent. However, Zhang Han's judgment was wrong. Bang, bang, bang. Zhao Feng and Elder Martial Brother Yuan saluted each other, then moved and began to fight. After watching for 5 seconds, Zhang Han shook his head slightly. Zhao Feng was relatively lacking in terms of combat experience, while the one on the opposite side must have experienced many battles of life and death. Yuan's movements were very tricky and experienced. Along with his mountain-splitting palm move, a terrible air wave swept from his palm. Zhao Feng faced the possibility of defeat. However, to everyone's surprise, as he bent down, he turned into a shadow and made his escape from the right side. During this time, a short blade suddenly appeared in his left hand, with which he sliced through the air toward Martial Brother Yuan. Seeing this, Zhang Han could not help saying, "Good." In the face of danger, he did not panic but used the most suitable move to counterattack. Zhao Feng had a good understanding of martial arts, but he will still lose. Suddenly, a soft voice came from the side. It was a baby-faced girl in a long dress with her hair tied in 2 ponytails. She stared at the arena and said, "Brother Yuan has gone through a lot of battles. The young man brought by the young master seems to be inexperienced." Oh? Zhang Han looked at the woman, who seemed to be at Grandmaster middle stage and asked, "How do you know that?" "By using my eyes." The girl seemed to be very lively. She replied, "I'm good in judging people. For example, you give me the same feeling as he does. You do not fight much, right?" Zhang Han's mouth quivered slightly. He thought the girl had sharp eyes, but he was wrong. Noticing that Zhang Han did not respond, she did not seem to mind and asked, "Where are you from? I haven't seen you before." At this time, shouldn't you be nervous about the next fight? Zhang Han looked at her and shook his head. I'm not going to fight. I've been admitted in advance. I'm very talented in alchemy. I see. Zhang Han nodded and looked at the arena. The girl also stopped talking, because Zhao Feng had been defeated in this hot fight against Martial Brother Yuan. You are great. Elder Martial Brother Yuan calmly made an obeisance and then went to the front to draw lots. Zhao Feng shook his head slightly. Just as he was about to draw lots, he was stopped by someone's shout. Little girl, admit defeat as soon as possible. The hammer in my hand will not be merciful. He saw the challenge arena not far away from the side. Instructor Liu, carrying a divine object, a huge hammer which he had just received, strode onto the arena. After going up, he patted the bottom of the hammer happily and 2 slapping sounds could be heard. The others doubted whether his hands were hurt. Is it worth it to show off? As for Instructor Liu himself, yes, of course, I begged Uncle Zhang for a long time before he gave me this hammer. The woman on the other side was so angry that she took out her sword and said in a cold voice, "Don't talk nonsense." Waving her sword, she rushed toward Instructor Liu. Wow, such a temper. Instructor Liu sneered and quickly waved the hammer, which was bigger than his head. Then he smashed at the girl with his hammer. Clang, clang. The sounds of metals clashing rang out frequently, although the girl was at Grandmaster late stage, while Instructor Liu was at middle stage. The hammer shrunk the gap between them. Instructor Liu soon smashed the girl down onto the arena without hesitation. Tut, I'll accept your points. Clap, clap. Instructor Liu glanced at the people around and patted the bottom of the hammer with a complacent look. But all of a sudden, he saw the boss. Hiss. Liu was startled, then he stopped showing off and went out of the arena. 36 points. It was not a low score, for the security group members. Their fighting frequency was not so high and they did not need to prove themselves in this way. They were here to participate in a few battles and enrich their experience. On the other side, seeing the 2 of them off the arena, Xuanhuan stepped onto the arena at the urging of the other side. He had seen his boss and wanted to show off in front of him. Unexpectedly, Zhang Han's face salted slightly when Xuanhuan started fighting. I almost forgot about them. Whoosh. He turned away and came to Heaven Lake again. Both protectors were afraid when they saw him. Young lord, why are you here again? Every time he is here, he absorbs too much energy. If he comes every day at this rate, it won't take him a year to drain Heaven Lake. Zhang Han was also a little speechless. He waved and left 2 kinds of divine objects and 2,000 low-grade crystals. He was too rich. As soon as he entered the chamber, Zhang Guanyu came in. Oh, you are so diligent. Zhang Guanyu laughed. Try your best in cultivation. Uncle Dong will change his opinion of you when he sees this scene. I'm not cultivating. Zhang Han replied, some time ago, I cast a spell on the 3 little guys, but they all broke through today. This showed that Mugs the female demon, Shi Fengyu the little rock and Yi Longyuan the devil incarnate, had similar qualifications and belonged to the high-end martial artists of the world. Incantation? Zhang Guanyu asked. Who? Mugs, Yi Longyuan and Shi Fengyu? Huh? Zhang Guanyu's face changed slightly. All 3 of them, but they are all the leaders of the younger generation. Even Yan Fei Yang could not defeat them, but they stayed in the secular world. After more than 5 years, Yan Fei Yang is already at Earth Realm, while they are about to break through to the Divine Realm. However, how could they have anything to do with you? What spell did you cast on them, if there is a chance? Shi Fengyu. As he spoke, Zhang Guanyu's eyes flashed with a cold light. That boy's blood is a fusion and he will grow up to be a powerful opponent in the future. It's a kind of incantation that puts people in debt. The spell has a huge limitation. It can only cause them to have inner demons, nothing more. It's a weak spell. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. The spell was not invincible. At least, those at Heaven Peak stage behind them would be able to erase the marker on their foreheads, but it is only temporary. It's time to deepen it. With a faint smile and lifting both hands, Zhang Han adjusted his chi and whispered to himself. Demon's curse, demon's seal, demon's skill, demon's spell. With his ethereal voice, a wisp of black light curled around Zhang Han, brewing and waiting. After half an hour, the black horns suddenly trembled, showing a complex mark. Zhang Han also said calmly, at compound interest. Buzz. 3 wisps of chi flashed by. Zhang Guangyu was stunned. Isn't the spell very mysterious? How did you finally master this one? Seeing this, Zhang Han laughed. They'll feel it later. How much do they owe you before interest? Mugswen Yilong Yuan owes me 10,000 crystals each. Shi Fengyu owes 20,000 crystals. Now the number has doubled. That is to say, Mugswen Yilong Yuan owes you 20,000 each and Shi Fengyu 40,000. Can they pay it back? They will come to me to pay me back. Zhang Han smiled mysteriously. This. Zhang Guangyu was a little speechless. 80,000 crystals is equivalent to a sect's annual income. Well, son, to be honest, the Luofu sword sect is also very powerful and leader Mu dotes on Mugs. The witch-hidden world in the Lihan sect is similar to them. Nothing serious. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and his face suddenly changed. Oh no, it's time for me to go back. Meng will be waking up soon. Whoosh. Before Zhang Guangyu could open his mouth, Zhang Han disappeared. He went back to the residence as quickly as he could. Meng was standing in the yard with Xian and had an unhappy look on her face. She put her hands on her waist and asked, Zhang Han, where did you go? You went out for fun while I was sleeping, didn't you? Chapter 774, Golden Age. Zhang Han felt a little dizzy. He almost burst into laughter before glancing at Xian. Xian was also smiling. It must be because she was afraid that Meng would cry if she didn't see her papa when she woke up. Meng was a fast learner and echoed Xian's words. So cute. Zhang Han was amused. He walked toward her quickly, squatted and looking serious, said, I'm sorry. Meng was a little confused and looked at Xian, then she remembered what she was supposed to say. She turned to Zhang Han and asked, Humphrey, why? I shouldn't have gone out to play when Meng was sleeping. And? I don't know. You know it. What should I know? What were you doing just now? Oh, it's all your grandfather's fault. He insisted on talking to your father. When we see him, we have to punish him, right? Yes. Meng believed him immediately and answered seriously, next time I see Grandpa, I will tell him not to take my pap out, or I won't like him. Yes, or you won't talk to him. Zhang Han smiled and said, let's go, my little princess. Let's go. Meng jumped into Zhang Han's arms happily. Xian could not help laughing. At the same time, she felt that ever since Zhang Han met his parents and was reunited with his family, he seemed to be more cheerful. He was happy and so was Xian. The family of 3 played on the lawn. Zhang Guangyu and Rong Jiali were busy with something. Zhang Li and Zif went to the outer ring to watch the battle, which also gave the family of 3 some free time. Oh, no, there were still 3 guys around, including Dai, Little Hai and Tiny Tot. In nearly a year, both Dai and Little Hai had entered the divine realm. If such a speed was revealed, it would frighten many people in the martial arts world. However, in the small world, they were not that surprised, and there were also many people who had obtained great opportunities. As long as they had enough resources, it would not be difficult for them to quickly cultivate into a martial artist at the divine realm. However, ordinary people would not be so willing to give others so many natural precious materials. Unlike Zhang Han, they cherished their lives and preferred to keep the natural precious materials for themselves in case they might need them in the future. The 3 of them enjoyed themselves. The demon's curse began to reveal its ferocious fangs as it scattered in various directions. Nestled within a wide range of mountains in the northwest, 7 Harmony World was the place with the best scenery and spiritual chi in the whole 7 Harmony World, which belonged to the Luofu sword sect. On a peak, Leader Mu and his wife were in a yard. It was like an open-air hot spring and lotuses could be seen everywhere in the pond. There was a faint mist floating above the water, which was the rich spiritual qi. Wearing a bathrobe, Mugs was lying under the water and cultivating with her eyes closed. After several days of preparation, her qi and whole being had been adjusted to the best condition and she was ready to break through to the divine realm. Leader Mu was also very generous. He used hundreds of middle-level crystal stones and dozens of divine objects. They were all 5th stage spirit treasures, but the gap between them was also very big. Most of the treasures in the worldlet sects were at the 5th stage and Zhang Han had not seen any treasures at the 6th stage, like the Thunder Yang tree. As time passed, Mugs' mother looked a little nervous. The fluctuation has lasted for 6 hours, why are there no results yet? Don't worry. Leader Mu shook his head slightly and said, she is saving up her strength and waiting for the final moment to break through. She will most likely reach the God realm late stage. Breaking through to the divine realm is a big leap. After absorbing some divine object or pure energy, she will be able to reach the peak stage of the divine realm in a few days. After slowing down and stabilizing her cultivation base, she will not be far from breaking through to the earth realm stage. Only when she reaches the earth realm stage will she be able to stop. What she will consume is the foundation that she has accumulated for a long time at Grandmaster Peak. I know, but can't bear it. I'm just worried if she will be injured. Even if she breaks through to the God realm late stage, she still needs an overall balance. Mugs' mother sighed. She can do it, it is starting. Leader Mu's eyes narrowed. The spiritual chi formed waves and converged into Mugs' body. Her face emitted a green glow. As time went by, the spiritual chi became more and more intense and the chi that surrounded Mugs finally broke through to the divine realm. Early stage, middle stage. When Mugs' rising chi was about to be stabilized, a trace of a struggle flashed across her face. Buzz. A massive amount of spiritual chi constantly compressed into her body. Gradually, she was about to break through to the God realm late stage. However, at this moment, something happened. Mugs' face darkened. At the same time, a faint ethereal voice could be heard. At compound interest. At compound interest. The voice seemed to form countless echoes, which made Mugs' face turn more and more pale. She seemed to see something terrible and she could not stop shaking. Leader Mu clenched his teeth and spat out a word, curse. Ah? Mugs' mother was startled. Clatter. With a wave of Leader Mu's right hand, a divine object for dispelling curses appeared. It was a 10 centimeters grass. A soft light appeared, covering Mugs' face. But the black fog was very cunning and quickly escaped into Mugs' eyes. Boom. Mugs' body trembled for 10 seconds before she regained her composure. She slowly opened her eyes and stood up. There was a look of fear and confusion in her eyes. What was conspicuous was the marco that appeared on her forehead. Mum and Dad, I broke through. Mugs felt the chi circulating in her body and then she came about. She was confused. When I just broke through, I felt like I had a nightmare. This. Mugs' mother hesitated and did not know whether to say it or not. Anyway, Mugs would see that mark when she looked in the mirror. Why are you not even trying to erase that mark? She touched Leader Mu's arm. Clatter. Leader Mu raised his hand and took out a spiritual herb, trying to work with the array to remove the mark on Mugs' forehead. However, all his efforts were in vain, which made Leader Mu's face turn blue gradually. Mugs also noticed that something was amiss and turned quickly to look at the pool. Looking at her reflection in the water, an angry scream rang out. Ah, Zhang Han, I'll go and kill him. Leader Mu was about to leave as his face darkened, but before he got out of the yard, Mugs turned her head. Don't go, I will go by myself. When I have stabilized, I will press him to the ground and beat him severely with my own hands. She was so angry that she wanted to avenge herself, so Leader Mu stopped. On the other side, Yi Long Yuan did not make too much noise. After breaking through, He was frightened and angry. He was alone and did not say much. Instead, he liked to plan ahead. For example, he would find a chance to kill Zhang Han after his cultivation had stabilized. So did Shi Fenwu. Behind him stood the seventh elder of Wind Snow School. You said you had been cursed by Zhang Han. Is the mark revealed for one day a month? Yes. Besides me, there are Yilong Yuan and Mugs. I will kill Zhang Han before they do. Kill him? Hee hee. The seventh elder seemed to be sniggering at himself and said, the treasure house of our sect has suffered heavy losses. This time, you have only a few holy objects for breakthrough. Fortunately, you are highly talented and have a good bloodline, which helped you to break through to the God Realm late stage. Do you know why there are fewer resources? It's because of Zhang Han. The seventh elder wanted to kill Zhang Han for our sect. The subsects in the other four worldlets were all destroyed and the culprit is Zhang Han. He is just at Grandmaster peak. Even if he breaks through the divine realm, I can beat him to death with one slap. He even knows how to break the heaven-earth formation. He will only create endless problems. If you want to kill him, it's good. Everyone in the Wind Snow School wants to kill him. It's up to you whether you can do it. Go and find other people to practice with and fight for the honor of Wind Snow School. As for Zhang Han, we'll wait for the opportunity. Hearing this whole speech, Shi Fengu's pupils shrank until they resembled needle points. Zhang Han had done so many things during his period of seclusion, it was an exaggeration to say that all the four subsects were completely eliminated. All the people, including the Grand Elder of Wind Snow School, thought that it was Zhang Han who broke the heaven-earth formation. However, the one who assassinated the 10 protectors and destroyed the subsects could not be him. He had the strength at Grandmaster peak, which was not fake. Even if he broke through, his combat effectiveness would not be very good. But they did not know that, sometimes, the most incredible doubts might be true. These people went out to make trouble as soon as they broke through. The frequent appearances of the divine realm martial artists gave the martial arts world an illusion. It was as if the golden age of martial arts was coming. Chapter 775, Massive Resources. 2 days later, Zhang Han also heard some news. He and Zhang Guengyu were sitting on the lawn, looking at Meng who was playing not far away. Zhang Guengyu said, yesterday in the secular world, Mugs killed a talent of a sect. She appears to have broken through to the God Realm late stage. Yilong Yuan killed a martial artist at God Realm medium stage. Shi Fengu's speed seemed to be faster. These are the 3 people who owe you crystals, and there are other sects. Many of them sent the elites from their sects. The secular sect is complicated and has a lot of connection with the worldlet. It is estimated that the younger generation of martial artists will fight for a period of time. In 2 days, Heavenly Knights sect will send Yun Fei Yang from the south of the mountain, Liu Feng from the north of the mountain, and Wang Xiao as well. Oh. Zhang Han just responded vaguely to these series of information. It didn't interest him at all. Those 3 people, however, said they wanted to kill you. They do not intend to be merciful when they meet you. Heavenly Knights sect is not afraid of any force. However, if Mugs comes to us, please spare her life. Her father is also a hero who once fought against foreign enemies with me. Zhang Guengyu said with some emotion. I see. Zhang Han nodded to show that he would. By the way, how are you doing these days? I see you running to Heaven Lake every night. Zhang Guengyu smiled. It's okay. I've used almost all the items in my space ring. I have not started yet. I need all the spiritual herbs I got last time and whatever is available in the treasure house of Heavenly Knights sect. I'll try to break through with them. Zhang Han thought for a moment and said, as for spirit treasures, I'll personally instruct you on how to improve your strength, and then it will be much easier to get spirit treasures. The first one is Uncle Dong. Hearing what Zhang Han said, Zhang Guengyu felt a bit confused. Zhang Han's words were always astonishing. He even asked for all the spiritual herbs from Heavenly Knights sect and wanted to instruct the Grand Elder. Although I know it is possible, I still feel a little shocked. Zhang Wenyi's mouth trembled. Do you need so many treasures for your cultivation? Aren't the spiritual herbs enough? Yes. Fine, I'll pick it up in the afternoon. Zhang Wenyi pondered a little and finally nodded his head. He also wanted to discuss it with Dong Chen. Perhaps this would not succeed, but with his son's talent, he felt that Dong Chen would not refuse. So many treasures are enough for many people to break through to high levels. In other words, dozens of cultivators could advance from divine realm to heaven realm with these treasures. When everyone has absorbed the treasures, they have to refine their energy, stabilize their cultivation and then continue to absorb the energy after the first batch is fully in control, which takes a lot of time. You can absorb energy now, but you do not need to use so many treasures, right? Or will your body explode with more energy than you can bear? And what level can these treasures help you to reach? It's not only spiritual force and soul sense, but also the state of mind. This kind of comprehensive improvement is the right way. In general, treasures only account for 30% of the cultivation. The rest depends on one's own skills, mood, epiphany and talent. Zhang Wenyi felt that his son seemed to have some misconception about the natural precious materials. He had a feeling that Zhang Han did not cherish them. An ordinary disciple would fight for a long time for a divine weapon and would be too excited to fall asleep in order to cultivate with the exchanged divine object. Why did Zhang Han regard divine objects as cabbages that were so easy to get? Well, you have so many questions. Zhang Han smiled bitterly and said, first, these resources can only help me advance to the middle stage of innateness. The second point is that I absorb these treasures not to transform the spiritual force, but to refine my body. The third point is that my cultivation method is at the top tier. With the help of Xian, my talent is beyond my imagination. My strength and background are only starting now. You will know it in the future. I'm also thinking about the cultivation method I gave you, but it's a little messy. You're my father, at least I should give you the most powerful cultivation method. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Zhang Wenyi smiled and said, okay, then I'll wait for your cultivation method. Alas, when I reunited with you this time, I find that I can't give you any advice on the martial arts. Anyway, it's up to you. Don't be rash. You're not only my son now, but also Yan's husband and Meng Meng's father. I see. As they spoke, they looked ahead again. I carried Meng Meng and ran back and forth, followed by Little Hai, who was sneezing non-stop. Zhang Wenyi said with a smile, Little Hai has been sneezing a lot recently. Is it related to the treasure-sniffing nose? I thought that supernatural powers like that were for special power individuals, but it doesn't seem that way. It's very simple. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and said, the gifted supernatural power is a kind of supernatural power awakened by chance. Most of the cultivators have supernatural powers, which is closely related to the cultivation method. It requires comprehension. Gifted supernatural power is the secret method circulating within the human body according to the spiritual force, which couples with blood vitality and spiritual sense. It is a kind of relatively erratic state. For example, the combination of human and sword. The supernatural power can be inherited, like some true ancient relics. The spiritual sense left by the strong cultivators will open up the small meridians of people. If they have good comprehension ability, they will also succeed. It's difficult to cultivate a gifted talent skill. Whether it can succeed or not depends on Little Hai's luck. Look at the way it is sneezing. It sniffs everything for a few times, as if it is practicing the new skill. Zhang Guanyi looked carefully at Little Hai. Even if it is not the same as mine, it will have its own supernatural power. It's complicated. I'll go to Uncle Dong and talk about it. Zhang Guanyi nodded. Oh yes. Today's assessment of the outer ring is over and about 300 people have entered the 8 peaks. In the evening, they will choose the mountain they like. Tomorrow morning, at 8 a.m., there will be the finals and the top 50 people will fight in the arena. Those who lose the competition will be replaced. Shen Chenqing will be fighting. It is said that his skill was taught by you and several elders are looking forward to his performance. That was to say, the elders also wanted to see what level of skill Zhang Han had imparted to Chen Shenking. Zhang Han was strong enough now. They all knew that this guy was very good at setting arrays and refining pills. Though they had not seen his level yet, they did not about know anything else and were curious about it. It was normal. After all, he was the grandson of Jiang Shenwang. As for Dong Chen, he was more curious and expectant. He was very clear about how powerful Zhang Han was. As soon as he broke through, he killed a cultivator at Earth Peak stage and another at Heaven early stage. His cultivation method should be good. He wondered if he should try another cultivation method. He had not made any achievements in the past few years when he was at the Heaven Peak stage. Perhaps he could change to a better cultivation method which could also bring about some improvement. He believed that if he could break the immortal legend at the Heaven Peak stage, the structure of the world it would be completely changed and the Heavenly Knights sect would be in an extraordinary position. He was excited at the thought of it, but was it possible? Dong Chen was skeptical about this. He planned to watch Chen Shenking's battle tomorrow. While he was thinking, he did not expect that Zhang Guangyi would come soon and tell him about their difficult thing in his opinion. All the spiritual herbs? Dong Chen asked again. I can leave some for our daily use. I'll give him the rest. He has just broken through and has practiced a relatively powerful cultivation method. His meridians are recast and he has great potential. Uncle Dong, you know, my son is a little weird and mysterious. His opportunity. Before Zhang Guangyi finished, Dong Chen waved and said with a smile, I know, you don't have to say that. Maybe it's not proper for you to give him all the resources. I would not agree if someone else asks me, but your son is really competitive and I regard him as the hope of Heavenly Knights sect, so don't say that. Even if he wants more, I'll try to find a way. Heavenly Knights sect is not only for your family, but also for all of us. Maybe some people are as gifted as Zhang Han and we will focus on cultivating them. Of course, I will never worry about your son. Go and get it. Let him cultivate as soon as possible. Only when he is powerful can his life be truly stable, let alone that he is now the target of Wind Snow School. Zhang Guangyi was also a little excited when he heard these words. He nodded heavily, thank you, Uncle Dong. Zhang Guangyi respected Uncle Dong who had followed his father to fight. It was no exaggeration to say that although Zhang Guangyi was a young master, Dong Chen was the actual spokesperson for Heavenly Knights sect. Of course this was also linked to strength. Let's go. Dong Chen laughed, though he felt a slight heartache. He not only had to give Zhang Han all the resources he had just robbed a few days ago, but he even had to use some from the inventory. Heavenly Knights sect was so poor. Should we prepare for the trial in the ancient mine? Dong Chen was thinking about it, but then he removed the thought from his mind. There were many crises in the ancient mines, which were not suitable for cultivation. I'll take some elders there when I'm free. He sighed. In the afternoon, Zhang Han received a huge amount of resources. There were countless spiritual herbs at the 4th and 5th stage. According to a rough estimation, there were more than 200 kinds of divine objects and more than 500 holy objects. These resources alone could promote all the members of security group to the divine realm, but their promotion had no effect on the whole situation. What was needed now was high-end combat power. Moreover, Zhang Han should firmly grasp the issue of safety, not his own safety, but the safety of Meng Meng, Ziyan, his parents and Jiang Li. That night, Zhang Han went to Heaven Lake again after Ziyan and Meng Meng fell asleep. The two protectors were depressed. Young lord, there are no more divine objects. Now we only have crystal stones to produce spiritual chi. Pure energy could be obtained by consuming divine objects, such as fire bamboo, which provided hot fire attribute energy, and the same was true for other divine objects. Moreover, no one had been cultivating with divine objects in the sect until the arrival of Zhang Han. It was the first time for the two protectors to see someone regarding divine objects as cheap cabbages. Here you are." Zhang Han took out 3 kinds of divine objects, all of which were spiritual herbs for healing one's spirit. Chapter 776, Cultivating the Skin of Demon. Along the way, they came to the room where they usually cultivated. They sat cross-legged in the center. The first level of Athanasia Demon Gong is to cultivate muscles, bones, flesh and blood. On the ancient monument, there are 3 marks, but I can't leave any mark on it though I'm at the 9th stage of past tribulation. The first mark is 1 foot deep, the second is half a foot and the third is close to half a foot. Maybe it was left by a great immortal in the world of immortals with lesser information. The sentence at the top reads, "There will be no immortal if the demon is not destroyed." Who is the demon in this sentence? Is the demon an obstacle to our cultivation? The questions he left about the martial arts are just about some details. The order should be flesh, bones, flesh and blood. The second and third marks are about breaking away from shackles, referring to the danshan and injury. Now I have 10 inches danshan and sound of thunder in my soul sense. See, according to the order of flesh, muscle, bone and blood, there is no reason for me to fail. Zhang Han was confident. He was so talented that there would not be any problem in his cultivation. If there was a problem, it must be due to his lack of resources. But now that he had these resources, he could firstly refine his skin. Athanasia Demon Gong. It should be the self-made skills and bodybuilding skills of the demon. After we get our immortal body, there may be a higher level for us to reach. But now we don't know the status of the cultivation world. In the future, we will have a chance to check the stone tablet and read the sentence again. Zhang Han was not aware that 500 years before his own rebirth, the appearance of the cultivation world was different from what he was familiar with. If the cultivation world was the same as it had been, many secret realms would be open to him and he could get many spirit treasures. But he felt that it should not be the case. Even the earth had some slight changes, let alone the cultivation world. Don't think about it, it's far away. I'm now cultivating to gain the demon skin. My body can be divided into head, neck, trunk and limbs. If I can cultivate behind closed doors, I will be able to cultivate all of them. However, I can only cultivate every night, which can't support the whole body cultivation. Start with the limbs, the legs. Zhang Han took out more than 20 kinds of divine objects, put them around his body, slowly closed his eyes and started to launch the Athanasia Demon Gong, starting from his feet. But Zhang Han did not expect that the cultivation of the skin would be so painful. Zhang Han's endurance was many times more than that of ordinary people, but he was still sweating due to the pain and his feet seemed to be sizzling. With the help of Athanasia Demon Gong, he slowly absorbed the energy of the divine objects around him and converged them into his feet. He felt like his skin was being pricked continuously by numerous needles. He couldn't even pretend to be numb. In this way, the night passed. Zhang Han opened his eyes just before dawn and a trace of fatigue flashed through his eyes. In one night, I did not even succeed with the feet and there is only a small circulation in my legs, which absorbed 7 kinds of divine objects. The cost is high, but the effect is good. One night later, the feet cultivation should be finished. When the whole body succeeds, it will be time for me to gain the demon skin. There will also be a kind of gain of supernatural powers. I wonder what will awaken in me. Zhang Han meditated for 2 minutes, took back the other divine objects, stood up slowly, but suddenly he staggered. Hiss. He could not help gasping in pain. The tingling is getting stronger and stronger. This skill is very torturous. Zhang Han shook his head slightly, unable to walk normally. He could only use his spiritual force to lift his legs. He could walk normally in this way, but there was a gap between his feet and the ground. In this way, Zhang Han left Heaven Lake and returned to his residence. Xian was already awake. She didn't see Zhang Han when she woke up and could not sleep. She had been waiting for nearly an hour, but Zhang Han was not back yet. At this time, when she saw Zhang Han, her red lips were pursed. "You are back late. Well, I've cultivated for a while, but I did not notice the time. Why did you wake up?" Zhang Han chuckled. "I can't sleep without you. The beauty is the hero's grave," which made sense. It was Zhang Han's attitude that Dong Chen was not used to before. He could guess what Zhang Han's next words were if he was here. Sure enough, Zhang Han took off his coat, went to bed and hugged Xian. "Now it is 6 o'clock, shall we go back to sleep?" "Okay." So Zhang Han went to bed with Xian in his arms. Compared with spiritual practice, Zhang Han preferred company. If it were not for the crisis, Zhang Han would not have asked for so many spirit treasures for cultivation, or he would have let nature to take its course. Nowadays, Zhang Han had no regrets and did not want to be king. But it was not so easy to live an actual leisurely life. At least, Heavenly Knight's sect was not strong enough to dominate everything in the world, so that he could still enjoy his leisure freely. He was not forced to cultivate, but only accelerated his cultivation. After a while, Meng also woke up and the family got up. When they got dressed, Rong Jiali started to prepare breakfast. Breakfast was soon ready. Today, there were fewer people here, even Zhang Guangyu was not here. They had all gone to watch the sect competition. In the past, there would not have been so many participants in the competition, but this year, because there was a challenger, Chen King, they all went to join in the fun. In the afternoon, after being coaxed by Rong Jiali and Xian, Meng agreed to let her father go out to look for her grandfather. During this period, she could not help mumbling, "Humphrey, I don't like Grandpa." Xian and Rong Jiali both smiled helplessly. The child is too attached to her father. Yes, she only likes her father. They began to laugh and talk. Zhang Han went to the outer door and came to the arena. When he found that there was no one there, he patted his forehead. "Where is the competition held?" Whoosh! Zhang Han's body floated into the air and from a distance he could see the square on the side of the hall at the top of the mountain. He moved and quickly flew over at a low altitude. At the edge of the square, he stopped and walked inside the crowd, watching the battles on the challenge arena. In dozens of arenas, there was one person standing on it based on the ranking from the last competition, waiting for the others' challenges. At present, there were about 15 or 16 contestants. The defenders and the attackers were inseparable. Each arena was surrounded by a layer of light to prevent the spread of the after-effects of the battle. At a low altitude of more than 10 meters, a huge board was suspended. The Grand Elder Dong Chen, Zhang Wangyu, First Elder, as well as the leaders of the other peaks, were all sitting on the wooden chairs. Gaik Kong was now at the God Realm late stage with flourishing chi. He sat beside Zhang Guangyu and nodded at the challenge arena. Dong Chen's disciple Yan Fei Yang ranked first on the challenge arena. Zhang Han did not know the second disciple, who might be from the North Mountain. Wang Xia was the third and Jiang Bing ranked seventh. The top 5 were all at Earth Realm, and from the sixth disciple, they were all around God Realm peak stage. The last one was at God Realm late stage. Chen King, who would be on the arena, was standing on the side with Zhao Feng and Instructor Liu with a huge hammer. In the morning, he was not taking part in any competition. They noticed Zhang Han. Dong Chen tried to say something, but he finally turned his gaze on Zhang Guangyu. Chapter 777, Mighty Emperor King. Han, come here. Zhang Guangyu smiled and beckoned Zhang Han over. At this, Zhang Han, who just intended to watch a little bit before taking off, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Then, he flew up to the audience stand. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Many people turned to stare at him. The inner door disciples were all particularly intrigued. It was the first time they had seen their young master's son. There were murmurs of discussions, and even the battle in the ring was no longer appealing to them at this time. Is he our young lord? It seems that there is nothing special about him. I once heard from the elder that this young lord seems to be very strong. Older martial brother Wang said that when he first came to Heavenly Knight's sect, he was at Grand Master peak. Now he should have made a further breakthrough, right? Putting his cultivation aside, Young lord is also quite handsome, hee hee. Younger martial sister, don't get all mesmerized. I've seen young lord's wife from afar. She's a knockout. What's the point of being handsome? In my martial arts system, strength is what matters the most. Since he is our young lord, he ought to take part in the competition as well. At the very least, he can show us some of his strength. If his strength can't match his status, that certainly won't make sense. Maybe he has started late, but he is also in the divine realm now. A martial artist should seek for battles and victories. He has been in Heavenly Knight's sect for nearly a month, hasn't he? But he's actually holed up in young master's house all the time. Shush, senior martial brother Liu, watch your tongue. Now drop the topic. First elder has already given you a look just now. Although older martial brother Liu's voice wasn't loud, how could anyone present not hear him if they wanted to? Not to mention that he had dozens of disciples sitting by his side. In spite of the heads up, he didn't take it to heart. He shot a look back at First Elder and continued, big deal. If we can't even talk about it, then there's no fun. You can't just stand by and watch. Perhaps this young lord will lead us to do some tasks in the future. If he's troublingly weak and short-sighted, the ones who will suffer are we fellows, right? Since he's our young lord, he's got to prove himself. In his opinion, if Zhang Han showed up several times to fight and let everyone know his strength, he would have nothing to complain about. Moreover, he had seen Zhang Wangyu take away a ton of divine objects from the treasure house with his own eyes. Adding that Zhang Han went to cultivate in the heavenly pool, he naturally cottoned on. Zhang Han was a third-generation descendant of a martial art family, and probably a smatterer, but without paying any price or working hard, he already got so many resources, which made Liu sort of jealous. In fact, some people were with him. Even his master, the head of the North First Peak, had mentioned that the young lord had been given too many resources. Up until now, Dong Chen had not given any explanation to that, which made some peak heads feel that the consumption was too great. Even though Zhang Han was Mountain Head's grandson, he should at least be reasonable. It was a little out of bounds of him to empty the treasury like this. For that matter, after Zhang Han went on to the audience stand, the heads of the 8 peaks all glanced at him several times. Given what older martial brother Liu had just said, the looks they cast on Zhang Han were somewhat dubious. Just as Zhang Wangyu made to say something, Zhang Han waved his hand and glanced at older martial brother Liu casually, and then at all the disciples and peak heads present. Don't worry, I don't have time to take you on missions. Older martial brother Liu's and many others' expressions froze when they heard this. Older martial brother Liu's master, the head of a peak, cast a look at Zhang Han and said calmly, as the young lord of Heavenly Knight's sect, you should bear the responsibility. I don't own Heavenly Knight's sect. Zhang Han's tone was still calm. It was as if he was just telling the truth. But his remark made the 5 peak heads frown at the same time. A hint of embarrassment flitted across Zhang Wengyu's face. Dong Chen immediately waved at the crowd and announced, okay, let's continue the competition. He didn't want Zhang Han to say one more word. This guy was so powerful that if he continued to speak, the ones who would lose could only be those peak heads. Dong Chen didn't want to see them devastated, so he quickly changed the subject. At the same time, he sighed softly in his mind. It seemed that Zhang Han did not have much sense of belonging to the Heavenly Knight's sect. Well, it took time to cultivate this sense of belonging. It was not until First Elder spoke that everyone obediently shut their mouths. Instructor Liu and his men, however, were a little angry. My boss can easily kill you all with his spittle. Instructor Liu thumped the giant hammer twice and glared at older martial brother Liu. The muscles on the face of the other party trembled, but Liu ignored him in the end. Chen Chengqing, on the other hand, chuckled with delight. Since someone is questioning my big brother's strength, I might as well give them some proof. Swoosh. Chen Chengqing's words instantly attracted the attention of the people around him. He then jumped up and leapt onto the 8th ring in a second. This caused quite a few people to exclaim in surprise. He actually chose to fight older martial brother Ma. Older martial brother Ma is at the God Realm peak stage and is about to break through to the Earth Realm. This time, he expects to beat Jiang Bing and move to a higher rank. This man is from the secular world, whose Taoism title is Emperor King. He is very popular outside, and known as the strongest talents in the secular world with young lord. Since he comes out to fight, we should be able to deduce the level of our young lord from the side. But I have a feeling that he will lose. Many disciples began to talk about it. Even older martial brother Ma in the 8th ring had a bewildered look in his eyes. Why don't you challenge a lower level ring? I've already picked the lowest one, Chen Chenking replied unhurriedly. Cough. A few people almost choked on their saliva. He chose the 8th ring, and he still claimed that he had picked the weakest one to challenge. Even older martial brother Ma was a little cross. Then Chen Chenking remarked, I'm now in the God Realm late stage, and what I've cultivated is the cultivation method given to me by Brother Han, which is called the 8 Drought Demonic Dragon. My King Dragon blood and this cultivation method complement each other. Few people at the God Realm peak stage can be my match. While speaking, Chen Chenking stared at older martial brother Ma with sharp eyes as if indicating putting away your contempt. Upon hearing that remark, many people present once again looked at Zhang Han. He looked perfectly composed. On such an occasion, with the elders of Heavenly Knights sect and the peak heads all present, he was still so at ease. This made many disciples' faces freeze with astoundment. Their first impression of Zhang Han had been improved a lot. He is good-tempered, steady and reliable. He doesn't look like a good-for-nothing at all. However, the current men of the hour were still Chen Chenking and older martial brother Ma. The crowd withdrew their eyes after a few glances, and even Yun Fei Yang and his men turned to face the 8th ring. The two stood opposite each other, full of momentum. Swoosh! A great battle was about to break out. At this time, all the elders and peak heads were also watching the ring with full attention, especially Dong Chen and his league of elders. People even forgot that there were still more than a dozen battles going on in other rings. After other battles came to an end, the cheering was rather thin. Then, those who cheered immediately fixed their eyes back on the 8th ring, where the fiercest fight was taking place. Gradually, the fight on the 8th ring was the only one in progress. People were all gathered around here, feeling the great waves of energy fluctuation. Many were astonished and couldn't help exclaiming, Emperor King, you're amazing. You've just reached the divine realm, but you've been neck and neck with Ma Zhan in this fight. His cultivation method was given by young lord. Since he's so powerful, then is young lord even stronger? Why do I feel that older martial brother Ma is going to lose? Can it be, now that older martial brother Ma is about to break through to the Earth Realm, can he really be beaten by a martial artist in the divine realm? The battle made everyone's blood boil with excitement. They were all so shocked, for they never knew Chen Chenking could be so powerful. Many couldn't help thinking that he did the right thing to challenge the ring. In the martial arts world, the strong prevailed. When one showed his strength, everyone would approve of him, wouldn't they? I wonder if young lord will come to the ring today. I, too, want to see how powerful he is. Many people wondered, and even several peak heads couldn't help but swivel their eyes to Zhang Han again and again. They grew curious when they saw that Zhang Han's face was still unperturbed. Is he so sure that Chen Chenking will win? As Ma Zhan's master, peak head Lan Yi opened his mouth to say something, but at this point, Dong Chen beat him to it. He is winning. Everyone concentrated. Peak head Lan Yi even thought Ma Zhan was about to win, but who would have thought? Bang, 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 bang. As several dull thuds came out, Chen Chenking, like a god of war, performed 3 secret skills in succession. Ma Zhan's face turned pale, and he took dozens of steps back and almost spat out a mouthful of blood. After swallowing the blood in his mouth, he covered his chest with his right hand and stared at Chen Chenking in horror. Thank you for letting me win. Chen Chenking cupped his hands, turned around, and jumped onto the seventh ring. What, is he also challenging Jiang Bing? The crowd was shocked. Don't you want to take a break? Jiang Bing couldn't help asking. No need. You'd better take some elixir to replenish your energy. Mind you, I'm better than Ma Zhan. Jiang Bing reminded him again. Ma Zhan's face darkened at that. Damn it, I'm going to challenge you. Okay, it's hard to say who will win. Cut it out, we'll know once the fight begins. Shan Wangzhang's fighting intent surged, and his intimidating awe arose again. Ha ha ha, good, I like that. Jiang Bing was stunned at first and then laughed. Finally, he couldn't help but comment, you are much more gallant than our young lord. He didn't even want to have a competition with us after he broke through. It was not a mockery. Shan Wangzhang's cultivation method was taught by Zhang Han. Jiang Bing felt that he could surely defeat Shan Wangzhang, so he was more eager to fight with Zhang Han. Thus, he tried goading him to come up to the ring. Ha ha. Zhang Han shook his head with a giggle, thinking that Jiang Bing was a quite interesting man. The two peak heads also chimed in. I think he has a point. Since young master is a heroic person, his son has to fight a few rounds to show his heroic spirit, right? There are so many people here, you can pick whoever you like. Let us see if it is really like father, like son. Oh. Zhang Han replied casually, then I'll fight you two later. Rumble. The two peak heads were a little dumbfounded. What did you say? You're challenging us? How dare you? I think it's okay. At this juncture, Dong Chen abruptly mentioned causally. Buzz. The two peak heads both felt dizzy and darted confused looks at Dong Chen. What did he mean? Then the fierce battle on the seventh ring gripped their attention. Are this brat's moves even more impressive than before? One of the peak heads looked in surprise after taking a look at Shan Wangzhang. Why do I feel that he was building up strength in the previous battle, and now is really showing his power? He is at the mere late stage of the divine realm, but how can he be so mighty? Chapter 778, Invincible in the Divine Realm? Jiang Bing's swordsmanship is very brilliant. He's mastered the eight-wind sword art, but even so, he is still suppressed by Shan Wangzhang regarding momentum. If the fight continues, Jiang Bing won't have many chances to weaken his momentum. According to the moves they use, Shan Wangzhang will win in the end. The eyes of these elders and peak heads were very sharp, and they had a thorough understanding of the progress of the battle. But the one who knew it best was Jiang Bing himself. At this time, he couldn't help cursing in his heart. Damn it. FCK, what kind of bizarre move is this? He wasn't this fierce when fighting Ma Zhan. How come he gets so mighty now? Why can he absorb my strikes to enhance his offensive moves? What is going on? I cannot let this continue. A glint of savageness flashed across Jiang Bing's eyes. He forced himself to fend off several Shan Wangzhang's heavy strikes. It turned out, wham! With a muffled sound, Jiang Bing was kicked out of the ring. So embarrassing. Jiang Bing lay on the ground and didn't want to get up, but he seemed to feel the gasping around him. He knew that if he continued to lie there, it would be more embarrassing. Emperor King, you're really amazing. Jiang Bing stood bolt up, jumped back in the ring, and made an obeisance by cupping one hand in the other before his chest. It's a good fight. Without the secret method, it'll be hard for me to beat you. His expression was a little surprised, and so was his tone. It also gave people the illusion that Jiang Bing still had a powerful killing move, but he chose not to use it and so lost the match. But did the other party also have a killing move? Jiang Bing knew that there must be, but he wouldn't point it out. With that one remark, he looked away. Shan Wangzhang cupped his hands and smiled, then jumped onto the sixth arena. Hiss. At this, the place was bustling with noise and excitement. Is he going to fight Lin Shi? Even the peak heads present were a little astounded. I remember that since Lin Shi had advanced to the divine realm, he has never been defeated. He even has the makings of our mountain head. He is invincible in the divine realm. If Lin Shi can maintain the legend of invincibleness after this battle,
He will really be matchless in the divine realm. It is even possible for him to get the new title of Immortal King. A peakhead rated Lin Shi quite highly. However, Dong Chen's eyes lit up. Hearing that remark, he shook his head slightly to object. In terms of the cultivation realms, Zhang Han, who is in the divine realm, can kill even ones in heaven realm. What realm is he really in then? Even Brother Mu was not so heavenifying back then. After observing the two battles, he also noted that Chen Shenking's cultivation method, the 8-drought demonic dragon, had greatly increased his strength. What an excellent cultivation method. Dong Chen couldn't help glancing at Zhang Han, thinking that maybe Zhang Han could really provide a cultivation method that could benefit him a lot. You want to fight me? Lin Shi, who was on the 6th arena, had his eyes closed the whole time. When Chen Shenking came to the arena, he suddenly opened his eyes. His pupils were sort of small, like a wolf's, and they were filled with a threatening aura. Seeing this, Chen Shenking was not afraid at all. He conjured a divine sword in his left hand, and put his right hand on the hilt of the sword. I only need one strike to defeat you, he said calmly. What did you say? Lin Shi frowned slightly and said, I need 3 moves to defeat you, but only 1 move to kill you. In other words, he would vanquish Chen Shenking in 3 moves. As soon as his words were out, a black stick appeared in Lin Shi's right hand. When he was about to make a move, Chen Shenking instantly drew out his sword. Glang! A cry of the sword made the entire arena square shudder. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Chen Shenking shouted, 8-drought demonic dragon, blood dragon slash. Clatter. The ordinary sword shadow tended to be dazzling, but Chen Shenking's sword was emitting the smell of blood instead. Roar. He let out a roar of a dragon, with his imposing aura dashing to the sky. Rumble. With a loud noise accompanied by dazzling light, the spectators involuntarily screwed up their eyes. 3 seconds later, when they finally saw what was happening in the ring clearly, they heard a burst of exclamation. What's going on? Didn't he just make a move? The 2 people in the ring were still standing on their spots staring at each other, as if they hadn't fought at all. However, the elders present were a little stunned. They exchanged a look and noticed the shock in each other's eyes. In particular, Dong Chen seemed quite excited at this time. Even the big heads weren't sure what had happened. However, what Lin Shi said next made them unable to sit still. He said with some bitterness, You are amazing. I admit my defeat. I can't figure out who else in the divine realm can beat you. Invincible in the divine realm? Chen Shenking sheathed his sword and smiled. You're wrong. My martial arts were all taught by Brother Han. He has gone beyond the divine realm, and I feel that he can crush me only using one hand. Perhaps you don't believe it, but when he was at the Grand Master Peak stage, he already made me feel as if I were facing a formidable enemy. So, if there is someone invincible in the divine realm, then it must be him. At last, Chen Shenking pointed to Zhang Han, who was sitting in the audience stand. Then he glanced at the thousands of disciples present and said boomingly, You can question his strength, but don't gossip. I don't want to hear it. My brother Han doesn't want to hear it either. Whoosh. With that, Chen Shenking leapt out of the ring and strolled back towards Elfing. Awesome. Smack, smack. Instructor Liu shouted and vigorously patted his hammer again. Looking at his proud face, Zhang Wengyu seemed to be a little amused and gratified. After all, Instructor Liu loved his gift so much that he carried it with him every day and thumped it frequently, which even caused his hands to swell several times. As Chen Shenking returned, the people around him began to discuss his performance more zealously. He's a kick-ass. He's indeed strong, defeating older martial brother Lin in one move. That's merciless. He said that he had learned all his martial arts from Brother Han. Does that refer to our young lord? Everyone's attention once again fell on Zhang Han. Even the elders, protectors, and peak heads cast their eyes on him. The 2 peak heads, whom Zhang Han picked to fight with, looked completely baffled. One of them,
who was a middle-aged man with a flat-top haircut, said, "It seems that our young lord has a deep understanding of cultivation methods. Why don't I lower my cultivation today to learn about our young lord's power? What do you think, young master? Don't tell me that you don't approve of it because it's your beloved son." Hearing this, Zhang Wangyu almost laughed out loud. However, before he could speak, Wang Xiao, who was in the ring, smiled and said, "Peakhead, isn't it a bit of a bully if you come up and fight? Young lord is still young, and he's of our generation, so if he wants to spar with someone, it should be one of us. How about it, young lord? If you want, I'll spar with you." Wang Xiao was doing this out of good intentions. He had reached the Earth realm. Although he was in the early stage, those in the Divine Realm definitely couldn't be comparable with him. Moreover, each peakhead was basically at the peak of the Earth realm. From where he was standing, if young lord went to fight those old guys, he would suffer a huge loss, wouldn't he? So, young lord had better fight against him instead. At least, he would always cut him some slack. Some people present had also figured out what he was thinking. The two peakheads shook their heads and smirked. They didn't feel like fussing about it and were ready to agree. But Zhang Han opened his mouth to speak. "Among the young disciples, there are 5 who have reached the Earth realm. That looks pretty good." "Huh? Pretty good, you're telling me?" "Of course, it's good." The 8 peakheads all looked at him, waiting to hear what he would say next, but to everyone's surprise, the next sentence he uttered was completely different from what they had expected. "It's just that they're still not up to standard. King Ming Steel." Buzz. Zhang Han stretched out his right hand and cast 5 blue seals at the same time, which appeared above the 5 disciples. Chapter 779. He will be invincible in the world. The seals arrived with tiny thunderbolts, which vented out a powerful pressure, which came from the trembling of souls. The Pluto incantation and Pluto seal were the means that Zhang Han often used. Now that he had broken through to the innateness realm, the power of these secret methods had been brought to even higher levels. Clatter. Yan Feiyang, Wang Xiao, and the other 3 disciples' eyes were full of horror. Their faces showed that they were struggling, resisting, but it was extremely difficult for their spiritual force to extend out more than 3 meters. Their soul sense was suppressed so that they could only extend within 1 meter, and the trembling souls were also stressing them every second. Break. With a roar, Yan Feiyang performed the secret soul sense technique. A cyan wheel rose from his back, like the moon rising from the sea, but it couldn't move another inch upward when it was 5 meters over his head. Wang Xiao was in a daze. The 5 of them each performed their best skill, but no one managed to undo the seals above them. What? The elders and peakheads turned pale with fright and all rose to their feet. So did Dong Chen. It was the first time that he had seen Zhang Han make a move after the breakthrough. He didn't expect that the seals he conjured offhand were so powerful that even the disciples in the Earth realm couldn't deal with. Quake. Without turning a hair, Zhang Han pressed down his right hand. Rumble. The King Ming steels started to vibrate and then began to bear down upon the disciples. Bang, 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 bang. Several muffled thuds came out, and the secret methods of the 5 people were cracked in an instant. However, they reacted quickly and immediately switched to other secret methods, but no matter how hard they resisted, it was in vain. Thousands of sect disciples were stunned. Their mouths were wide open and their eyes were wide open in disbelief. Did he alone single-handedly get the better of the top 5 disciples? It's f-king dramatic. Is this a prepared show or something? But the elders were also dumbstruck. How could it be a show? SHT. Instructor Liu was taken aback. This. Shen Chenking was a little dazed. Originally, as he had been practicing the 8 drought demonic dragon, he could even fight against a martial artist at the peak of the Divine Realm when he was only at the Divine Realm middle stage, and when he reached the Divine Realm late stage, he thought that except for Brother Han, no one could defeat him. He even had the confidence to fight against an expert at the early stage of the Earth realm. This was the benefit that the cultivation method brought to him at the beginning. That was just for starters, but he didn't expect that after the breakthrough, Brother Han could even suppress those in the Earth realm without effort. No wonder he forcibly shattered his meridians after breaking through. He could have broken through to the divine realm at any time, only he pushed it off again and again. It turns out that the breakthrough he wanted to achieve is different from the normal one. He is incredible. If I had met Brother Han earlier and cultivated the 8 drought demonic dragon at the Grand Master level, I would have been able to outclass those in the early stage of Earth realm after breaking through to the divine realm. I would have been able to defeat one at a time, if not 5. But it's not too late now. It's really amazing, Brother Han. Gradually, Chen Qingqing began to see Zhang Han in a different light. He was really taken by surprise that Brother Han was actually so powerful. Zhao Feng and the others had similar thoughts. After the outer ring battle, they suddenly found that what they lacked was only combat experience. Their cultivation methods and combat skills way outstripped their opponents. They could even fight against masters at the Grand Master peak. If they had not met those in the divine realm later, they wouldn't have lost that big sum of points. By this time, Dong Chen also cottoned on to the situation. All the cultivation methods provided by Zhang Han could help cultivators to fight beyond their levels. Take Leng as an example. She had defeated 5 Grandmaster Peak Masters in a row. When she made her strikes, there were beams of cold light that seemed to penetrate the bones, which really impressed him. Moments ago, Chen Qingqing also showed his power of the divine realm last stage, proving that he was unbeatable in the divine realm. Zhao Feng, instruct Liu. Those figures flashed through Dong Chen's mind one after another. This group of people can fight beyond their cultivation levels. This group of people, even though they are not the most talented ones, their strength is incredible. These people have all cultivated the cultivation methods given by Zhang Han. Zhang Han, this boy is a living Sutera's depository. Dong Chen was sort of thrilled at this idea. Zhang Han also had Dai, Little Hai, and Tiny Tot, as well as a King Kong, a watchdog, and an ancient cursed rock. There's something absurd with this kid. Dong Chen was now sure that Zhang Han had a better cultivation method for him. If he could make a breakthrough and defeat other peak stage Grand Masters with that method, the Heavenly Knights sect would be unassailable. While these people were lost in their thoughts, the 5 disciples were still struggling, and their faces had turned crimson with the effort. Looking at the intricated seals that were gradually pressing down upon them, they felt they couldn't stand it any longer. I surrender, young lord, you're good. Come on, stop it, I surrender. Wang Xia was suddenly disheartened. He didn't want to fight anymore, though he felt a little wronged. What overwhelmed him was shock and incredulity. He shouted a few times in a hurry. After seeing this, Zhang Han shook his head in amusement and dismissed the King Ming steels with a flick of his wrist. The vibrating force that the King Ming steel had been emitting, that strong pressure, had enhanced the self-defense of their souls. Although the improvement was minimal, it could also be said that he had gained something from this fight. Anyway, when they all felt that they could not bear it anymore, Zhang Han did not pursue the attack. These people were all talents in the martial arts world. The development of the Heavenly Knights sect was still up to them. So, Zhang Han had also prepared a set of suitable cultivation methods for each of them. Once everyone in the Heavenly Knights sect was able to fight against those who were stronger than them, the beginning of their prosperity would come, and that would also be the beginning of Zhang Han's leisure time. A kid can only remain as a kid for a few years. I still have 4 years to take care of her before she comes of age. I shall be with her in the years of her growing up, for she will become a big girl in the blink of an eye. Although they had parted for just a while, Zhang Han already started missing Meng Meng, and suddenly lost interest in the sect competition before him. He had watched Chen Qingqing battle and also made a strike himself. I'm going back to spend time with my daughter, Zhang Han said coolly. Then, he leapt up to the air and flew to Zhang Wenyi's house at the foot of the mountain.
Dong Chen stretched out his hand. He still had something to say to Zhang Han, but watching Zhang Han disappear in the distance, he knew that Zhang Han wouldn't hear his voice. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. At this moment, thousands of people, whether in and out the ring, suddenly burst into an uproar. FCK, he's so awesome. Young Lord defeated older martial brother Wang and the other four with one move. Oh my, if I hadn't seen this with my own eyes, I would have thought it was made up. Then what level is the young lord at? Has he reached the heaven realm? There was a hot discussion. Wang Xiao and the other disciples looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. You guys are really devoid of sense. It would have been over once you begged for mercy, only you decided to hang in there and make me do the begging. Wang Xiao curled his lips. Who would have thought that his strength would be so? Yan Feiyang didn't finish his words, and his pride was completely shattered by that move. He had aimed to be the #1 disciple of Heavenly Knight's sect. Well, forget it. It's not what I should be thinking about, young lord. You're my model now. Someday in the future. Yan Feiyang swallowed his arrogance and thought that he would defeat Zhang Han one day. But it didn't take long for him to find out that it was a dream that couldn't be realized. Seeing that the sect competition had also suspended, First Elder touched his dizzy forehead and said in a muffled voice, the sect competition continues now. Chen Qingqing and Zhang Han's previous battles do not count as part of the competition. Those who want to challenge the current ranking, please go to the rings. But that announcement did not work. The disciples were still immersed in the scene a moment ago. What was more, many junior martial sisters had blushed. Expectantly, they began to ask if young lord had a girlfriend, but the answer they got was, "Didn't you hear what he said at the end? He was going back to see his daughter. Since he already has a daughter, how could he not have a wife? Do I need you to tell me that? You're such a chatterbox." Seeing that his words had no effect, First Elder did not say anything more. Even he himself was still in shock at this time. Vibrating. Dong Chen suddenly raised his right hand, and a faint ripple spread out, forming a circle around the stands. He made to say something privately. He knew that if he got it out at this time, they would be more shocked. Zhang Han surely had the idea of improving Heavenly Knight's sect's overall strength. In addition to his previous observation, Dong Chen reckoned that Zhang Han had a lot of advanced cultivation methods, and he wouldn't allow outsiders to benefit from it. He thought that everyone in his sect should have a copy of the methods at least. So Dong Chen coughed to attract other people's attention, and then slowly said, "My first point is Zhang Han has the method to break the heaven-earth formation. I'm not talking about one or two sects, but all of them. You heard me correctly. Zhang Han can break the heaven-earth formation of all sects." "What? That can't be." Just as everyone was astounded, Dong Chen waved his hand and continued, "Listen, second, Zhang Han's strength after the breakthrough is rather beyond our imagination. He went with our young master to destroy the 8 sects who attacked us, and except for the main sect of the Wind Snow School, all were flattened out. Third, Zhang Han can easily kill a martial artist at the Earth Peak stage. He had even killed a cultivator at the Heaven Early stage. Therefore, even in our Heavenly Knight's sect, his strength ranks top. Fourth, a few days ago, he went to the main sect of the Wind Snow School, assassinated Protector King Zen's and the other 9 Earth Realm Protectors, and then took away their medicine mountain. The fifth point is that he's had a great haul from these battles, including low-grade crystals accumulated for decades, thousands of middle-grade crystals, and a lot of divine weapons and divine objects. However, his secret cultivation method requires lots of divine objects, so we have provided him with most of the divine objects and holy objects he needs. Sixth, as you saw from the previous battle and the outer ring battles, Chen Qingqing and Leng Wu and the others can all defeat disciples in higher realms. They also have a lot of points. What does that tell you? I'd like to remind you that their cultivation methods were all granted by Zhang Han. Seventh, don't make a fuss. Sit down and digest what I've told you. Dong Chen said that in the final sort of way.
His speech made the peakheads and the elders, whose eyes almost fell out of their sockets, fall silent before they could utter a word. I feel like I'm in a dream. First elder propped his forehand with a hand and muttered, "The first point. Is it true? I can't believe it. So it was all his doing." A few minutes later, they all cast their eyes at Dong Chen. "Grand Elder, this means that kid is already unimaginably heavenifying. That's not material." The third elder, who was very strong among the elders, suddenly stood up. His eyes shining with excitement, he stared at Dong Chen and articulated, "The most important thing is that when Zhang Han grows up, in the future, he can slay those at the heaven peak stage and dash the legend of their immortality. He will influence the power structure of the entire worldlet, and he will be invincible in the world." Chapter 780, A Dispute. So he is the hope of our Heavenly Knights sect, right? That must be the case. I was wondering why Grand Elder agreed to give him all those divine and holy objects. It turns out that he had his reasons. Why didn't you tell us earlier? The two peakheads, who prepared to test Zhang Han's strength before, smiled bitterly and said, "Didn't we make a fool of ourselves just now? He could even kill those in the heaven early stage. What kind of freaking strength is his? I finally see hope." Sixth elder's eyes reddened a little. With a trembling voice and an exultant look, he exclaimed, "After decades of war, our Heavenly Knights sect finally sees hope. This is great. Zhang Han is a real man. He's really made Mountain Master proud." Fifth elder said with a beam, "He's better than his father." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone looked at Zhang Guangyu and couldn't help voicing their opinions. "Yes, he's much stronger than young master." "Don't say that. Young master has been working hard to cultivate for many years and has gone through a lot of hardships. Now, he's also quickly reached the Earth Peak stage, hasn't he?" "Of course, compared with his son, he really has nothing to brag about. Perhaps things will always turn to their opposite when pushed to the extreme. Look at the Zhang family. How unbeatable our Mountain Master was back then. But when it came to our young master, there was no more big news about the Zhang family. After all these years, the young lord abruptly soared and became the most powerful cultivator ever." Zhang Guangyu, at this time, he, who had been complacent about himself, was a little dumbfounded. "What's with them? Why do they start to ridicule me again? Ha ha." Zhang Guangyu curled his lips and said, "You are envious that I have a great son. No matter how strong he is still a work of my genes." Ha ha ha. The crowd burst into laughter at once. Although they mocked him, it was because that the depression they had endured for so many years was finally vented. They could not help but say it out loud, and it could also be said that they were just joking around. Zhang Guangyu was also aware of this. In fact, everyone knew it. After laughing for a while, Dong Chen waved his hand helplessly. "Your focus is a little different from mine." "What focus?" Everyone looked at Dong Chen again, only to hear him say in a slightly cheerful tone, "Didn't you notice what I said? The cultivation methods that Kid provided are all top-notch. How could Chen King be invincible in the divine realm when he is still at the last stage? It's all attributable to his 8th demonic dragon." You also saw how powerful his cultivation method was and how formidable Zhang Han was when he conjured the seals. He is a man who went to the main sect of the Wind Snow School and quietly assassinated 10 protectors. How forbidding are the skills he knows, I can't imagine. And how powerful is his formation art? Since he is capable of breaking the formation of all sects in the world, it must have exceeded our understanding. I heard that his elixir refining skills were even more impressive. Gai Xingkong also said that aside from the knowledge of cultivation methods and secret techniques regarding battling, Zhang Han's attainment in formation was only second to his elixir refining skill. He told me that personally. From that, we can imagine how powerful this guy is. If he hadn't been so close to Guangyu, I would have suspected that he had been possessed by an old monster. As soon as he said that, the expressions of everyone present froze. He is even better in elixir refining? The pupils of sixth elder and head of the elixir peak contracted. That's right. Gaik Sinkong said with a smile. He almost never made a furnace explode when making elixir. I only heard him mess it up once or twice, and that was because the quality of the furnaces was too poor. His success rate is nearly 100%. 100%? Sixth elder and that peak head looked at each other and made up their minds at the same time. I'm going to consult him about the way of elixir refining. The two of them immediately rose up to leave. Recently, they had been trying some kind of elixir, but they had not succeeded. But they said that Zhang Han was best in elixir refining, and his second best was the formation art. Considering that he was already able to undo all the formations in the world with his second best skill, how mighty would his best skill be? They didn't know the exact answer, so they just wanted to consult Zhang Han in personal and then would know. With a few words, they would be able to know what level he was at. If he really was freakishly learned, then they would properly ask for his guidance. Don't rush it. Dong Chen waved at them and said, what I'm concerned about is that Zhang Han has top-level cultivation methods. He is going to hold his wedding on September 9th, and there is still half a month to go. Young Lord needs to go back and prepare for his wedding. Our Heavenly Knights sect has the Heaven-Earth formation, so we should be safe. But Mount New Moon, where he is living, is not protected. For that reason, Zhang Han plans to go back and set up the Heaven-Earth formation there, and I also prepare to take 2 elders there to guard it. At his words, the eyes of several elders lit up at the same time, and even the peak heads could not sit still anymore. They all got up and gathered around Dong Chen. Ahem, since he wants to set up the Heaven-Earth formation, first elder must go there, and that leaves us only one opening. You can have a discussion first. Dong Chen's words made first elder burst into laughter. Ha 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 ha, great, good luck finally favors me. At this moment, no one paid attention to the smug first elder, but were all scrambling for the only opening left. Sixth elder said, my cultivation method has always been my weak point. This time, no one wants to compete with me. Zhang Han's elixir attainment is very high, so we have a lot to share. With my need for a better cultivation method and my study in elixir, the gain will be maximum if I go there. Third elder snapped. Bullshit. If you have a second thought, let's take this outside, except for Dong Chen. Who else is my opponent? Zhang Han is somewhat brilliant. Maybe the cultivation method he will give me can help me reach a higher level. Fifth elder advised, he'll give you cultivation methods sooner or later. There is no hurry, but lately, our beast-taming peak has practically been emptied by his spirit beasts. For this matter alone, it should be me. Don't you think? Also, I want to switch to a more potent cultivation method, and I need to talk about how to raise the spirit beasts with him. Look at his spirit beasts, how protective they are of their master. The peak masters also joined the discussion. I figure it should be me instead. If I break through to the heaven realm, I can also become an elder. Right, our room for improvement is the biggest. Grand Elder, think about it, we are all at the Earth Peak stage, only one step away from the heaven realm, but young Lord can already kill those in the heaven realm right after he broke through to the divine realm. He must have very valuable experience. Why not pick me? Besides, Yun Dan Yang is also very excellent. I think he can be the next peak head. Not only Yun Fei Yang, but also many members of the Protector group are qualified to be the peak head. It's the most urgent thing for us to break through to the heaven realm. Looking at the people who had fallen into a quarrel, Dong Chen felt he was having a headache. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Zhang Guangyu grinning. Then, he said nonchalantly, since Zhang Han is Zhang Guangyu's son, young master should be the one to pick the candidate. Ha ha, young master, you know who to pick, don't you? Third elder stared at Zhang Guangyu nervously. The others also fixed their eyes on him. At that moment, Zhang Guangyu was a little confounded. Who should I choose? He indicated that he was somehow clueless about the right answer. Don't you already know it? Sixth elder said blandly. I, Zhang Guangyu, was driven mad. What King answer do I have? This is so hard. 2 seconds later, Zhang Guangyu suddenly became serious. This time, we heard the wind that the wind snow school might attack Mount New Moon, so, as for the other elder to go with me, he must be great in battles, so, I pick third elder, the rest of elders, don't worry, you'll have your chances in the future. What? Since there might be a fight, you should put in more people, I can avoid my duties. Like that, these people began the second round of the debate. How many people should be taken on this trip? While the discussion went more and more intense, the thousands of disciples at the audience stand were a little confused. What are the elders doing? Seems like there's a quarrel. What's going on? They're having a big row. Look, sixth elder's saliva is spurting out of his mouth like a rainbow. Damn it, looks like third elder is gonna kill someone. Why does fifth elder look so ferocious? What in the world are they doing? The peakheads are also very active in the quarrel. Is it because what happened just now is too shocking? Our young lord is really remarkable. The competition was now completely discontinued. The contestants were all waiting for the elders and peakheads in the audience stand to finish their talk. Eventually, more than 10 minutes later, Zhang Guangyu helplessly offered another term. 3 more peakheads could be brought there, but the others would have to wait for the next opportunity. Although they were unwilling to give up, the others didn't say anything. They decided to wait and see what gains the first batch would obtain after the visit. So after removing the soundproof layer with a wave, Dong Chen looked at the audience stand. The sect competition will continue and will last for only 2 more hours. The final ranking will determine the reward for the resources you'll receive. The rewards you'll receive this year will double those of last year. Buzz. At this remark, many people's eyes gleamed with excitement. As a result, a new round of fierce battles broke out. The new disciples, however, watched the competition with their blood boiling over. They felt that the sect competition was too fierce, but what impressed them most was the scene that their young lord easily suppressed the 5 strongest disciples as well as Chen Chenking's invincible bearing. There were bound to be a lot of people who would find this day hard to forget. After the sect competition, Zhang Guangyu and Dong Chen went to Zhang Han as soon as possible. Having talked about the schedule, Zhang Han decided to leave the Heavenly Knights sect the next day and go back to Hong Kong. In this trip to the world lit, Zhang Han not only got a lot of resources, but also a haul of crystals, formation stones, as well as the necessary divine weapons to set up the Heaven-Earth formation. Now the opponents he had to face were the Wind Snow School and those from the Caprice Mo sect. It was no longer possible for him to protect Mount New Moon on his own. The Heaven-Earth formation was a must-have. Moreover, coupled with the Thunder Yang Tree and other 2 divine objects, Zhang Han already had a plan for the Heaven-Earth formation to be laid on Mount New Moon. With the 3rd transformation ability of the Thunder Yang Tree, Zhang Han felt that it would take him only 3 or 4 hours. However, Meng and Xian still needed more protection. It seems that I won't be idle in the near future. At the very least, I have to absorb and digest these spirit treasures, cultivate the skin of demon, and acquire a new kind of innate divine ability. If I break through the middle stage of innate realm, even if I run into someone at the heaven peak stage, I'll be able to put up a fight against him. Zhang Han felt the long-lost pressure. I still need to teach Uncle Dong and the others new cultivation methods. Although they are at the heaven peak stage, they have cultivated for a long time, and so have a relatively large barrier to get over the elixir realm. There's still a long way to go. However, if they change their cultivation methods, they will have the ability to break through the elixir realm. I'm afraid that they won't be able to achieve it in a short period of time. I can't count on that. I'll only have time to relax when the overall strength of Heavenly Knights sect is enhanced. Zhang Han gradually figured out everything he needed to do next.